Hi, welcome to our visualization dashboard, 50 States of Blue. Mental health varies widely across the United States, often shaped by factors like income, education, and employment. In this project, we explore how these socioeconomic conditions relate to depression and anxiety at the county level. Built using D3.js, this interactive dashboard draws on two national datasets, one from language-based mental health assessments and another from the USDA Economic Research Service covering 1,363 counties and 17 variables. Our goal is to uncover key drivers of mental health issues, highlight regional disparities, and identify high-risk counties using a composite well-being score. Now let's walk through the dashboard. At the top left, we begin with the choropleth map, where counties are color-coded by either average depression and anxiety score or a composite well-being score. Bluer regions indicate higher levels of distress. You can also toggle between region and state mode. When a region is selected, if you select a region, so the Southwest region is selected now, all the other plots update to reflect only that subset of counties. You could also just select a state and it's going to show the data points belonging to that particular state in all the other plots. Then we have the PCA biplot. This shows the result of a principal component analysis where we applied k-means clustering to segment counties into three meaningful groups. Feature vectors are overlaid to highlight which socioeconomic variables are most influential. You can selectively highlight clusters to explore their patterns across all the other views. You could select just one or two or any combination of the clusters. Then we have the parallel coordinate plots. This allows brushing across axes such as bachelor's plus, unemployment rate to filter the data. So you can select a range on different axes and see the corresponding data points on all the other plots. You could also reset to deselect all the ranges. Then we have the donut chart, which shows the educational composition of the filtered or the whole population. Clicking on any slice, such as Bachelor's Plus, this filters the data set accordingly and updates the full dashboard. And finally, we have the scatter plot, where we can plot any socioeconomic variable against average mental health score. You could also use 2D brushing to highlight specific counties and instantly see their impact across the rest of the interface. You can also reset to deselect whatever that was selected. Now let's explore the data using this dashboard. First, looking at the PCA biplot, we see that the anxiety, depression, and the red arrow, which marks the average of anxiety and depression, is in the same direction of no high school graduation, as in the percentage of population that doesn't even have a high school graduation degree, and also the unemployment rate. That means high school grad, like no high school grad, and unemployment rate. These two variables really strongly correlate with the average depression anxiety score. Then, in the opposite direction, we have income and bachelor's plus. Income means median household income, and bachelor's plus means percentage of population that have at least a bachelor's degree. This means these two variables negatively correlate with the average depression and anxiety score. These are the variables that are of the most importance to us. Now let's look at how the clusters nicely reflect the patterns in the demography. So if we're choosing, let's say, just the cluster 3, the pink cluster, this is spread across and towards the vector for average depression and anxiety. That means this group of counties is actually going to be vulnerable. Then if we select the purple cluster, this is the group of counties that are higher in income and bachelor's degree. So these are the counties that are actually doing quite well because it's in the opposite direction of depression and anxiety. We have cluster 2, which don't really fall in any specific pattern. We can get a lot of information from cluster 1 and cluster 3. Let's look at the parallel coordinates plot. Let's select cluster 1 first, which is the cluster that's doing well. We can deselect cluster 3 and 2, just look at cluster 1. We can clearly see that between cluster 1 and cluster 3, cluster 1, purple one, is actually lower in the average depression anxiety score. And the percentage of population that don't have even a high school graduation degree is quite low. Then we have bachelor's degree that goes quite high. Unemployment rate is pretty low. They have relatively higher income and they have some college degree, but college degree that doesn't really separate a lot between the two clusters. But all the other variables do show a significant difference between the clusters. So looking at the pink cluster, which is the most vulnerable group, their average score is higher and also higher in no high school degree. Bachelor's degree is pretty low. Unemployment rate is rather higher than the purple cluster. Income is lower than the purple cluster. And they do merge into some college degree because that's not really a decisive variable here. Let's look at the bachelor's degree axis in the parallel coordinate plot. We can select range to actually detect the cutoff point where the pink cluster emerge, and that cuts off at like 40%. And these are the counties in Texas and Arizona. The specific counties here, Massachusetts, fall under that group. If you go lower, that's where the pink cluster sort of emerge. These are the quite the vulnerable population. We can also look at no high school grad variable because this is the most correlated with the average score. And if the percentage of population that don't have a high school degree is, let's say 15 to higher, they tend to have a higher average score. And if we go lower, that's where, of course, the bachelor's degree increases since no high school degree is low. So there's this particular cutoff point where the clusters separate. So if we're selecting no high school grad and we want to look at like the vulnerable clusters, we can see the counties emerging from the like the bottom border part of the US. These counties in New Mexico and in Texas, a lot of the counties in California are actually quite vulnerable. Now, let's look at the donut chart. Let's see, since no high school grad, this particular variable is actually quite important to us. If we select this and deselect it, we can see which counties are being highlighted and which one is going away. And that again leads us to the bottom periphery of the map where we can detect that California and um, some of Arizona, Texas, these places, and even in Louisiana are actually quite vulnerable. We also noticed that in Texas, a lot of the counties fall in the vulnerable region compared to some of the other states. And if we look at the parallel coordinates plot, we can see that a lot of the counties in Texas are quite high in the percentage of population with no high school degree. If we look at California, where we have a lot of data points for the counties, we see a good mix of the pink and purple clusters. And if we look at income in the scatter plot, we see a nice negative trend against average anxiety depression score. Bachelor's degree is also negatively correlated. Unemployment, as expected, is positively correlated. And based on these correlated variables, we also did a composite well-being score that we can show on the Core Plus map. And the lighter green parts would be the more vulnerable counties, and the darker greens are the ones that are doing well. So this is the dashboard that we prepared that gives us insight into how different socioeconomic variables relate with mental health state. Thank you so much.